Hey, John with the Conversation That Matters, here to discuss Richard Weaver's book, Ideas Have Consequences, written in 1949. The reason I think it's a valuable discussion to have is because I did not feel like I was reading a book from 1949. Richard Weaver is truly prophetic. More than any other author I've read, especially any author from the 20th century, I would say. He has so many far-reaching observations that are so true, I could have been reading something written yesterday, today, or maybe even tomorrow. Richard Weaver sees the issues that stand before our culture in the here and now, and he saw this all the way back in 1949. And that causes me to pause and consider and try to understand, how did Richard Weaver know what would happen in 2017 and the road that society would go down and where it would bring us? Truly is an astounding work in many ways. And what am I talking about? What kinds of things did Richard Weaver see that caused me to pause and consider what he has to say? Well, Richard Weaver starts out his book with the idea that nominalism, which he attributes to Occam in the Middle Ages, has been responsible for societal decay. And the reason for this is because nominalism, the idea that really there are no forms, there are no transcendent telos, the purpose, no transcendent meaning that we can use as a frame of reference in our culture by which to relate to one another. That doesn't exist. Really, all there are societal conventions. We use words to describe things because it's pragmatic to do so, and society has agreed that these are the words we're going to use to accomplish a certain task. And what this has brought us is a very mechanistic view of life. The worker is no longer a craftsman. We don't take pride in our work anymore. Art has become vulgar because we're not trying to strive for the forms. We don't see dignity in our work anymore. We are consumers. We are part of a machine. We work for companies that don't have our name behind them. The companies we work for tend to have very broad and general names, and we don't stand behind our labor as we once did. Children are not as obedient to parents. In fact, parents grow up and become spoiled children, which is incredible to think of all the memes and discussions that are going on regarding millennials, and then to see Richard Weaver talk so directly about this issue in 1949, that adolescence would be extended. And the reason for it is because of the promise of science, that science was going to be our savior. Salvation is through science, through the acquisition of material and the manipulation of it and the domination of it to the point that all fleshly desires, because that's all there is when you get rid of transcendence, would be given to us and would actually in a sense be owed to us, and because the value of work has already been destroyed, because there is no transcendence, there is no reason to work hard, there is no pride to take in one's labor. Labor is just for the acquisition of more material. So everything becomes physical in nature. Everything becomes for the here and now. The past is no longer honored. And so children, this is a very childlike mentality, a spoiled child mentality, and that is something that we see now in adults. And Richard Weaver saw this in 1949. He also saw that the great stereopticon, he calls it, that society would continue to function, but only on the basis of what he calls the great stereopticon, the media. Now we see this today in social media and internet. He didn't see that, but he did see television, newspapers, radio as being the driving force behind people having the will to get up and go to work and function in their culture. And it was the advertisements that we see that point towards the immediate, that we need to have this thing now. It will make our lives better, and it motivates us. And there is no time for reflection. There is no time for looking upon transcendence. We are only in the here and now. Yesterday doesn't matter. Only what is current. Only what is new. And we're constantly looking for the new and disparaging the old. And this, of course, explains what's going on with monuments and the ripping down of anything from our past. It's a great pride. And Richard Weaver discusses why this is a problem, why this will ultimately result in the suicide of modern man. That modern man, under these premises, these conditions, cannot exist. Richard Weaver, of course, goes on and talks about a great many other things that would speak to our modern culture. And I would encourage you, pick up the book and read it, because I'm just giving you the tip of the iceberg here. But he does have a solution at the end. There is a hope, and I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is. And in fact, I don't think it's a complete picture of what true hope is, to be honest with you. Richard Weaver makes many biblical references, but he leaves out a Christian version of salvation, which I think is a problem. There is really no Christian eschatology, no optimism that Christ is going to come back and making that the reason for life and motivating us to combat what we see before us. But Richard Weaver does make a great many other observations, and I think the ideas he has for societal restoration are extremely good, and they should be implemented. And so I'm just whetting your interest a little because I want you to read the book. But all that to say, pick up a copy and consider for yourself. Go through it slowly. Don't rush through it. Really consider what he has to say, and get a dictionary while you're reading it, because some of the words he uses, I didn't know what they were, and I think a lot of people probably don't. But it is accessible for someone who has had a college education, or maybe even a high school education, if you have that dictionary and you take it slow. But it will truly enlighten you, and I just felt like so many things for me clicked and made sense that had not made as much sense before. Truly a great thinker, and so that's my commendation to you. Read Richard Weaver's Ideas Have Consequences and be amazed at the far-reaching implications and observations that he made back in 1949. Thank you, and until next time, have a good day.